Everybody, please give Stu a warm applause.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. I thank everybody here from the 128 Roundtable. It's a great pleasure. I want to thank Greg and the whole crew, without running through the names again, for having me back to talk with you for the next 3 hours. On a slightly more serious note, just mingling around here before we began, I asked how many people were here. How many years ago was it, Greg? About 10 years ago for my last talk. Put me in a little bit of a quandary. I probably should ask for a show of hands, but I think there's quite a few. Who was here for my last talk? About 7 or 8? Okay, that means I can't give the same speech tonight. So I'll try to change that. Let me say in opening here, and I'll make my point as I go along, when I graduated high school, it was affordable to go to college, and my father of moderate means was willing to pay for my way through college. But I felt a compelling need and a desire to spend my own money, to further my own education. So I started to think about some creative ways. There's the first cue on tonight's talk, and I'll get to that in a moment, to make money. And I'm not necessarily recommending this or condoning it. I was a kid coming out of high school, and if people out there remember the old WMEX, way back when it was at Fenway Park, and I sat home every day trying to be creative, to think of ways to make money ethically. And then I heard this lucky license plate number game on WMEX, beep, beep, toot, toot. If you're the owner of the lucky license plate number, and they gave the number, be at the studio within an hour. And you can win anywhere from $50 to $175 in cash. Keep it simple. I said, this can't be, can it? But what I immediately did was call the registry. I got the owner of the car, the phone number, very quickly in talking before they had a chance to rebut. And then I had to use some persuasive techniques of cultivating relationships. Call these people, and just like from the old Millionaire Show, James Barefoot Tipton years ago, I said, if you divulge the source of this money, you will forfeit it. And we worked out an arrangement where they would pay me half. It was a great show. Everybody was winning. And I would be down there at Fenway Park with different disguises on, calling my mother and father for the next winner. And everybody that came out, I had people coming in from 20 and 30 miles out spending cab fare. I paid for my way through college until I took it off the air. And back then you could afford to go to college. Brings me to tonight's topic. Networking. It doesn't quite fit the definition. And I tried to come up with a definition before I came here tonight, but I couldn't find a better one than Larry James. Utilizing your creative talents to assist people in achieving their goals, while cultivating a network of people to strategically position yourself in support of your own goals without expecting anything in return. Without expecting anything in return. The key statement. That's really what networking is about. And that's what I'll talk about here tonight in conjunction with some of the buzzwords we use today. You know, we like fancy words, little chic words, branding, collaboration, forces of innovation, coaching. I'll integrate all of these within some anecdotes in terms of how I've achieved success and how I might be able to convey some of these principles to you in a common sense way. Tough times out there, difficult economy. We're looking at overvalued companies in the 90s, the dot-com bust. We're looking at a lack of trust in business, which has been pervasive through industry for years. We're looking at 9/11, the horrendous tragedy of 9/11. And now we're looking for Enronitis. We're looking at lack of confidence in accounting procedures and an inverted recession, high capacity, low demand versus the typical recession of high demand and low capacity. Tough times ahead? No, I think the boom will be ahead and we'll be in another bull market, although I can't pick the exact time, but I think maybe I could do probably as well as some of the economists out there. We have low inflation, low interest rates. Prices are cost competitive in industry because they can't raise prices, which you normally do when you're coming out of a recession. Can't do it, so the consumer is benefited. Unemployment continues to accelerate. But it's a lagging indicator. So whatever the number is, 1.8 million, 2 million, 2.2, it'll continue to accelerate at diminishing returns as we come into a recovery because all the fundamentals are in order, including the end, perhaps, of a manufacturing recession. The worst in times that most of us can remember, with an average loss of people invested in the market of $64,000 a household. Tough times ahead, great opportunities for everybody out there to be successful. And there are a number of ways. I'll just throw one out. Consumer market right now, refinancing, no better time to do it. It's not the only option. There are options in every industry. But how do we do this and how do we achieve it? Most people say, well, listen, it's just easy. Go out and network and meet people and try to get something for yourself. I got a clue for you. It doesn't work that way. We live in a knowledge-based society, and part of it is really predicated on the fact that you better know what you're talking about today when you go out there. You better be well-equipped. Have the information at hand, internalize it, assimilate it, and activate it. Make it kinetic. Enrique Peñaronda's mother once said, if only I had known my son were going to be president of Bolivia, I would have taught him how to read and write. I love that quote. It's true. Because you don't often get a second chance in a society right now that's predicated more than ever on giving rewards and remuneration based upon achievement. I hate to use some cliches from Tom Peters and Toffler, but we live in an upside-down society where entrepreneurial pursuits, leaping off that cliff, jumping for those opportunities at hand will be much more prevalent and real than ever before. Having the information, we're going to work in focus groups, we're going to move laterally. Success will not be based upon moving up that ladder on achievement because you've been somewhere for 20 years. There'll be no such thing as careers in the way we've defined them before. Focus groups, projects, consulting. The opportunities are immense. I'll give you one example of having the information and being ready to activate it. I had the good fortune of becoming fairly friendly with George Foreman, having a number of interviews with George on my radio show when I had a sports show years ago. And where is that? George was kind enough to write the foreword for my book. And I always said, George, if there's any way we can work together. Well, he flew me out to Vegas to go to one of his fights, and then I got a call from his entertainment attorney, Henry Holmes, several years ago, and said, Stu, you said you wanted to work for George. Can you promote one of his fights under a gentleman named Jeff Wald, who was the principal promoter in Atlantic City with Lou Savarese? My immediate response was absolutely. And then he said, how are you going to do it? I said, Henry, I'll call you back in 24 hours with a plan. I had some experience doing it, but I wasn't about off the cuff to talk to George Foreman's entertainment attorney without the knowledge and the information of a plan on how to do it. George hired me. And generally when you go out, he who speaks first when you're negotiating is generally the loser. There are exceptions. I thought this was an exception. And I said, well, what does George think is reasonable to pay me? He said, I'll call you back. He says, George wants you to tell him how much. So I had a little difficult, but I came back with a number and he called me back and said, fine, you're hired. Just an example of having the information and taking it and creating it and making the opportunities work. Thomas Edison once said, opportunity is difficult to spot because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. If you don't know where you're going, all roads will get you to the same place. Thomas Edison also said, do the right thing and you'll please most of the people and amaze the rest. And what's the right thing? The right thing is so much predicated on going out and trying to create opportunities for others, and it'll come back to benefit you. So I'm going to give you some networking tips that I use that I have found to be very effective. One is, and it's a chapter from my book, it's called Time Isn't Money. We always hear time is money. Time isn't money. If you don't spend it today, it's gone forever. There's a big difference between being time effective and time efficient. Most people are time efficient. They've got a bus to catch. They've got to be at a certain affair. They have to meet somebody. And suddenly an opportunity comes along to make money. I can't do it because I have to be somewhere at a specific time. The people who are truly successful are those who are time effective and take their schedule and rework it in order to take advantage of the opportunity at hand. Yesterday's horse race results don't do you any good today. So be time effective. So how do you be time effective? I have a little formula that I use. I'm a morning person, but I don't mind the nights. The opportunity is there. I get up very early in the morning. And I'm always on the internet doing the kinds of things that I don't want to waste time doing during the day. So many people do paperwork or do things during the day without interacting or interfacing with people and creating opportunities. And it's amazing the number of opportunities you can create, because if you cultivate that network of people, each of us has a sphere of at least 250 people in our sphere. The big thing is, in today's world where careers change, modes change, business paradigms change, that you might end up with opportunities well outside your own career that will enhance what it is you're doing. If you're in the mortgage business, if you're in the real estate business, if you're an acupuncturist, what's to say there aren't other things you could do in a whole new society? So create those opportunities. Fax, email, use the internet. And when the day starts at 9, bless you, when the day starts at 9, you're ready to go, or whenever your day starts and you haven't wasted all that time. For other people, they do it at night. I like to relax in the evening. So utilize your time. How do you utilize it on the internet? I'm not a high-tech guy. Honest to goodness, I'm not. But I look at a lot of websites. I'm always looking at websites. And I'm amazed by the number of companies, significant, substantial companies, who don't know how to design a website. Now, maybe I'm sticking my neck out, but I think I've got a pretty good website because it tells the story and it creates an immediate impression. You have very little time to create that impression, and you've got to do it right the first time. You can't go back the second time. How many times you look at a website, the print is so small you can't read it? How do I contact this person? You can't find the contact button on the website. And additionally on the website, half the time you're looking at it, you don't know what the company does. Simplistic. Sometimes it's called the hook. What is the hook? I don't like that term, but I guess it's a very apropos term. What is it that will get people to respond? A couple of examples. If you have something that will make you outstanding, that will make you much more appealing to people, use it. Use it within the realm of what you do. And I think of an opportunity that I had back in the early 90s when I was dying to be on radio, and dead air time wasn't my problem. But I happened to really fall into a great situation by being on 300 stations, but only as a fill-in, and we went to Canton, Ohio to do the Hall of Fame inductions. And I begged the head of the network. I said, you've got to put me on. Time is running out. You've got to put me on. I pestered him so much. He actually got angry and said, all right, get on air. So I happened to be on with Sam Huff. Anybody remember Sam Huff? Middle linebacker, Hall of Fame for the New York Giants. And I knew I had very little time to create an impression. That's the key, to create an impression. I was lucky that I memorized something as a kid about football players and names and little jingles. But I knew I couldn't substitute players from the Hall of Fame quickly enough to do it. So I said something like, you know, Sam, this isn't just a tribute to every football player who's been in the Hall of Fame. It's a tribute to everybody who's ever donned an NFL uniform. Let's go back in time. King Hill, King of the Hill, shuffles a pass to Woody Lewis, and the Cards are deep in the cold corral. Y.A. Tittle, the balding mentor, hits Del Schaffner with a 35-yard touchdown pass, and the Giants are resting comfortably on a 35-0 pillow. Terry Baker makes his NFL debut, but it is indeed an inauspicious one, as a 70-yard pass is picked off for a 90-yard rocket ride. John Unitas hands off to Lenny Bourne, long Lenny lopes in for the score. Roger the Dodger passes to Preston Pearson, and Pearson pierces the pass defenders for 50 prodigious yards. And I turned to Sam Huff and he said, in his southern accent, what the hell was that all about? Got me a job. Got me a full-time on-air slot. Because I did something that really ran the risk, and we always run the risk when we're putting ourselves in the spotlight to create attention. It's always a fine line, especially in the business that I'm in media and communications and broadcasting. But there has to be a sense of who you are and what you do. In sports, it's provocative, it's entertaining. In a serious business show, you always have the client as the subject and the focus. It's knowing who you are and the appropriate time and what to do. Other examples. People, if you're on the website and if you have a company name, you want AKA, you want to be also known as. Do you know why? Because we're people who are so used to being rigid in our behavior that what we do is we do the same things every day. You know the old Einstein quote, the definition of insanity, if you do the same things every day and the same negative results and we don't change them, we've got to be flexible. How about if you've got a company at the end of the alphabet that begins with the later letters to have an AKA at the beginning? You know why? And I do it too. When I look for lists and I'm canvassing for clients, I start at the beginning of the alphabet. What about the people at the end of the alphabet? They never reached. You know why? Because at the beginning of the journey, we're all excited, but halfway through on the way to the destination, we give up and then we go on to something else. Find out how to get yourself out there in the spotlight, how to do it, how to create that attention. Another example, get to meetings. Who was the first one? Who do you think was the first one here tonight? Me. There was nobody here. They didn't even want to let me in. You know what time I was here? 3 o'clock. I guess it's a throwback to my father. When my brother got married, I remember sitting in the kitchen with my mother, and he looked up, and my brother was on his honeymoon. We had no contact, and my father looked at my mother and said, "They should have been there already." And my mother said, "Bert, how do you know they're not?" And he says, "I guess you're right." Part of that is in the genes, but here's what it can accomplish for you. And I'll give you an example. And there's nothing complicated about this. It's no great genius. 2 meetings I went to 2 weeks ago. One, I'm a sponsor for the Greater Boston High Tech Society. Went to the meeting to make contacts for clients for my show. Walked in, said to John Harrison, I said, "Excuse me, John, when you introduce me, could you just tell people what it is that I do? I'm a sponsor, but what is it that I do?" Number 2, instead of putting sheets on a table, I put them on every single chair. And number 3, when John Harrison introduced me, even though the other sponsors didn't stand up, I stood up and did a little wave. Why? So they'd know where to find me afterwards. And about 90% of the people came over to inquire about an opportunity. That's one way. A week later, I was at a National Investor Relations Institute. I deal with a lot of public relations and investor relations firms, venture capitalists. And just like today, I was the first one there. I was invited to the cocktail party, 5:30 to 6:30. Instead of being there at 5:30, I was there at 4:45 before the people at the table were registering you. And you know how we are at networking meetings. We don't want to come on too strong. There's always the feeling that you're going to turn someone off. But there I stood away from the table. I let them register before I attacked. I let them register, went over, introduced myself, stated what it is that I did, and then very carefully listened to what they did, exchanged business cards, and went on to the next person. I saw other people there that night trying to network. Everybody's there at the same time. It's called stimulus bombardment. You don't know what to do. You don't know who to go to, and half the time nobody can listen to what you're saying. Get there early. I got every single person that came in, and I left at 6:30 under relaxed conditions without being stressed. So that's a way to do it. Put yourself in the spotlight. Take a look at competition out there. Competition doesn't have to be your enemy. Competition can be your ally. We hear about strategic alliances. Strategic alliances with people instead of looking at people as your adversary. Try to create relationships. It really works. Years ago when I was in the fad business, the cultural phenomena business, incense was big back in the early 70s. I decided to create my own competition. You have to be ethical with people. There's a chapter in my book, the only lie that will ever net you $1 is the lie you don't tell. I had a very good brand of incense, and we're getting into branding as we approach the halfway mark in this, just about. Instead of having competing companies bring their incense into other stores, if there were 10 stores on a street, I was selling all of them because I brought in 10 lines of incense. And was it cost effective? Yeah, because it was so hot. Buy it, burn it, buy it again, just like milk and bread. So you can create your own competition, and a lot of companies do this by either having subsidiaries or going with other names, and we don't even know it, and yet it takes place every day. So creating your competition is an extraordinary way to be successful. Above all, influence. Create that sphere of influence. You've got business cards. Many people go out, they collect business cards. They come back and they say, "This was great, a lot of leads," and they don't follow up on the business cards. And they don't correspond, they don't call up, they don't fax. You've got to go through the complete process to do it. And most of all, you've got to create a situation where you can put yourself in a position to do things for other people. It'll come back, because the best form of advertising, aside from my radio shows, see, I'm doing it right now. The best form of advertising is word of mouth. If somebody can't come back to do something and to reciprocate, you know what they'll do? They'll go to somebody else and say, "You know something? Jack's a great guy. You should do business with him. I can't." It works all the time. It's absolutely amazing. Now, looking at networking within the context of the buzzwords we use today, what I want to do is just relate 3 experiences revolving around branding, collaboration, and the forces of innovation, terminology we hear today. But how different is it than it used to be? They're just different words. They're fancy words. We've always branded, had proprietary products, built up name recognition. Today, it's just a little bit fancier. And I'm going to give you 3 examples in 3 different time periods that you can apply to your businesses in order to be successful. Well, number 1, and this was a turning point in my career. I'm going to keep this story concise. Back when I was looking for national distributorship, Saturday Night Fever became available. I said, what, Saturday Night Live? I had purchased Elvis Presley posters from a company in New York. They flew me to New York. I saw the first uncut, unedited version of Saturday Night Fever with the Bee Gees. My head was swimming. All I could think about was, my God, I can't believe it. This is too good to be true. John Travolta, Welcome Back, Kotter. James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause. Marlon Brando, The Wild One. And George Chikara's West Side Story. I said, I can't believe this won't be, with this huge budget behind it, seeing what Paramount Studios was doing, an opportunity for me. Networking and branding. Went to lunch with the principals, entertained them for 25 minutes. My salesman out of New York, Jim Leahy, brought me there. He was getting a 2% override. I said, let's go to the men's room. I said, you're getting a 2% override for everything I sell in New England. How would you like a 2% override for the United States? Went back. Before I knew it, they said, can you cover the country? I said, it'll be done. Didn't have cell phones back then, but called my office. I said, Cecile, find out all the representative firms around the country that are compatible with the line we have, the top lines. She located them, got back to my office, traveled around the country, 12 cities in 5 days, presentations at airports, and most of the people said, since I had other products that anybody could get that were quite generic, we'll take Saturday Night Fever. And I said, not necessarily in the true sense of networking. Take the whole thing or nothing. It got me coverage nationally. It created a whole new dimension and a whole new area for me. Saturday Night Fever went on to yield other things. And in terms of image building and promoting yourself as the product, I was able to capitalize on that. 2 months ago, I gave a talk to MBA students at Bentley College, and I said, how many of you have developed proprietary products and services and you don't know what to do with them? All the hands went up. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to self-promote by putting themselves in the forefront, in the spotlight, in order to perpetuate it. Same thing with the book. I wasn't successful, but I begged and went around the second time. It was the 25th largest publisher in the country, and after the first cover, they did this. I actually got on my hands and knees. I said, let me travel the country. Put me on the cover with headsets on, Saturday Night Fever, Batman, and I'll sell the hell out of this book. I pushed it as far as I could. They wouldn't do it. They did it for Carl Reiner and Bert Sugar. But that's the publishing business. And yet when I went to New York, I worked 18 straight hours to get reorders because the publishing company didn't do it. Didn't even go to the bathroom in 90-degree heat. Every single Barnes & Nobles and Walden store I went to get my own reorders, which means you have to take things into your own hands in order to succeed very often. Fast forward, 1980s. What do we have, about 8 minutes?
8 minutes exactly.
All right. Fast forward. Collaboration. How many of you out there know who Dana Rosenblatt is? Dangerous Dana Rosenblatt? 3-time world boxing champion, 37-1. Avenged his only loss, a fluke defeat. Dana and I have had an amazing relationship. I handle his publicity, his endorsements, his speaking appearances. And as Greg said, we're about to embark on a new venture here. Fox Sports Network, Fox Sports New England, March 22nd with the first of 8 fights. Hope you'll have the opportunity to watch it to build up the ratings. I had watched Dana fight, hadn't had a personal relationship. Rico Petrocelli, when I were doing a show, in order to provoke controversy, I said something that wasn't too kind to Dana. He came in to do the show after he broke his hand in a fight against Glenwood Brown. We hit it off right away, first night, collaboration, you ready? We became friends instantaneously. He got an offer to do a TV job in Springfield Civic Center. What an opportunity. 2 world championship fights, tuxedos, production crew. It doesn't happen. They wanted him and somebody else. He said, I'm not doing it unless Stu Taylor does it with me. He had a little pull. He says, yeah, we hear a show. He's okay. Can he do boxing? And he said, absolutely. We went out there, tremendously successful. Taped the whole show. Said to Dana, you did your job. I'm doing mine right now. We split it. Packaged it up, sent them out to all the networks. Before I knew it, I got an offer from DirecTV. I remember the phone call coming through to my house to DirecTV. They said, we'd like you to do the guide track on a world championship fight in Boston, cool Vince Phillips and Irish Mickey Ward for 36 countries. Of course, I didn't show the emotion. I said, oh, absolutely. And I said, I'd like Dana Rosenblatt to do it with me. Well, we love Dana, but we only need one person to do the guide track. I pushed it again. I said, I really have to have Dana. And they said, we can only pay him half as much as we're paying you. I said, deal. I called Dana. I said, I got it, and we're splitting it. Who wants to take a guess on how I handled the payment arrangements? Whether I got one check for twice as much as the other, or 2 equal checks? Anybody want to venture a guess? Somebody, anybody? 2 different checks, right. Why? Because if I had 2 checks for the same amount, how would my value and ultimately his value be perceived in the marketplace? I would have established a level for my own success, which would have been lower. We split it, and we've gone on to do professional boxing and had a great time together. Fast forward, 3 minutes, just about? All right, 3 minutes. Innovation, the forces of innovation, being creative. A lunch at Jimmy's Harborside, and I say all of this in hopes that some of you can take some of this information, assimilate it, and help it in your own businesses. If I had the 3 hours, I could address every business individually. Lunch at Jimmy's Harborside, an investor relations firm. 15 minutes, Bruce turns to me and says, Stu, can you do a show if I supply you clients every week and interview the clients on a business show? Done. I had the equipment. I hooked up with Radio America out of Washington after having done a number of things at the Hall of Fame inductions in Cooperstown, Stanley Cup finals. I've been at the White House for healthcare reform, and I've hosted the 104th Congress at the Capitol building. This was a great opportunity because if you're in any restaurant and you hear things, and I shouldn't do this when I'm with my wife, but I'm rude, don't say anything. I want to hear what the conversation is. It can either be sex, something social, sports, or business. More and more business. Now it's more and more business in a lot of veins because of survival. Spot the trends, go where the trends are. I thought this was the opportunity I was looking for. I booked Radio America, where Oliver North hosts, Blanquita Cullum, and a number of others. It became so successful I branched out to Business Talk Radio, the only long-form business network in the country. And that became so successful that here in Boston, I was doing the show with Rico Petrocelli. He had other engagements after having us been a team on 4 different venues. I immediately converted my business show back June 2nd, successful from week 1. Ingenious? No. Creative? Yeah, I think it's been pretty creative. I don't know anybody else doing it, and it's bringing results to a lot of businesses out there. So those opportunities are out there in the most difficult times, but no matter what you're doing, do it with the idea that you're going to cultivate relationships with other people, help other people, raise your own individual achievement bar to match your level of aspiration. When your level of achievement reaches your level of aspiration, raise that level of aspiration again and keep raising it because it's an ongoing process. The opportunities are out there. And I thank you all for being a terrific crowd. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Stu is really right when he says that you have to be a giver in terms of the giving the information and working with people and not worrying about what you're going to get out of it.
I don't know, every time I hear him, I just, I said, I didn't think of it that way, or wow, I wish I could, I think I'll do that tomorrow, in my business.
It got my juices flowing, and it was pretty exciting.
I would, in a second, recommend Stu Taylor to anyone as far as if they're looking for a motivational speaker, if they're looking for advice, consulting when it comes to business growth. Every time that I hear one of his talks, I take something away that I can personally turn into money. And I mean that.
You're definitely able to use it in your everyday life.